Welcome to Useful Idiots. Thank you so much for being Substack subscribers. A few episodes ago, Matt and I were making fun of electronic dubstep artist Oz Chatterjee for believing we actually wanted Bashir al-Assad as our third co-host. And it just so happened I had a fellow fake Assadist in my house coming to visit that very day. So here is a Useful Idiots in-person interview with Rania Khalek of BreakThrough News. She has her own interesting experiences with Oz Chatterjee. In case viewers and listeners don't remember, Oz Chatterjee has a podcast dedicated to why Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. He also accuses me and Matt of being Assadists and has harassed Rania Khalek. Plus, Matt and I read our favorite excerpts from Madam Speaker, the new book about Nancy Pelosi. And don't worry, we make fun of her too. Rania Khalek. In person. Investigative reporter, journalist, creator of viral content, but also actual investigative journalism. Yeah. And she just joined BreakThrough News, which is a great, yes, it's great.
You got to go check out BreakThrough News on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter.
Everywhere that you find anything.
And exactly. I've got lots of really cool programming coming up at BreakThrough News.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about, I guess you've reported from Syria, in Syria. You've encountered some of these people who try to get who tried to get Useful Idiots canceled, and then they also kind of dilute. See, my dogs don't like that. They are not fans of that silencing.
They're like super against cancel culture.
I know, they're really.
They were like barking at people outside. I'm pretty sure it's because they were cancel culture warriors.
You could tell they were problematic.
They could sense it.
They could sense it. Yeah. Oh no, they weren't. They couldn't tell they were problematic. They could tell the cancelers were problematic.
Yeah, totally.
So you've.
I'm gonna talk to you through here.
Sure,
it's like weird sitting next to you, and then I'm gonna look here.
Yeah, we could do
otherwise my
do
neck's gonna be weird.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So tell us about what it looks like a hostage video, ironically. So tell us about what happened to you when you were reporting about and from Syria. And feel free to, I guess Oz Chatterjee really thinks that like Jeremy Corbyn's an anti-Semite.
Yeah,
so
he does.
He's some interesting.
Or maybe he doesn't believe it. I'm not sure. Like Oz Chatterjee is like an opportunist social climber. And the best way to social climb is to just like is to just repeat the talking points of the State Department or UK Foreign Office, and then also attack their enemies. So either he does it for free so he can get a better job, or he's like, either he's a useful idiot for them,
right,
or like some sort of paid propagandist. Right. I tend to think he's more of an opportunist because he doesn't seem to be able to like hold down a job.
Right.
But it's
this is not confirmed. Obviously, we're not reporting on this.
No, this is 100% speculation.
Yeah, right.
But Oz, actually, my first encounter with him was, this is like so shady. I wrote an article. It was like one of the first articles I wrote about Syria back when I was working at the Electronic Intifada. I'm sorry, I keep looking everywhere. I don't know where to look.
Oh, sorry. No, you keep.
I'm like, do I look? Anyways, I'm probably just gonna go back and forth.
Yeah, sure.
But anyways, so I wrote this article, and it was like, Rania Khalek, very vocal on Palestine, like is like openly being critical of the U.S. sort of war on Syria, and he messages me on Facebook. I've like never interacted with him before. And he's like, Rania, this is like really disappointing what you're saying about Syria. Like, I'm a huge fan of you in Electronic Intifada. I've like admired you for so long. And like, I saw you as like this hero. And so this is just like so disappointing. And then I was like, who the fuck are you? Right. And so I was like, okay, like I don't even know. I don't remember how I responded. I just remember it was just like, I responded kind of politely at first. And then I just got this stream of like threatening messages of like, I'm going to out you. Like you and your Assadists. Like you guys are just a bunch of Assadists. Like he's just like unhinged. And then after that, like whenever I would log on to my Twitter.
Do you still have them?
I have screenshots of them somewhere. Yeah. I used to share. I shared them online at one point. So I was like, look at this crazy psychopath. He's just like harassing me. And anyway, so then like after that, it's like I would be on Twitter and I just have like a flood of messages all the time from Oz Chatterjee being like, Rania's an Assadist, Rania's a genocide lover, like everything you could say. Like, and it's almost like there was like 5 people running his account because it seemed like he never slept. It was just a 24-hour propaganda account. I think I blocked him a few years ago. I don't like to block people because I feel like it's for wusses. But if somebody's like just like relentlessly just tweeting at you.
No, it takes too much out of you.
It's like, I don't even want to see your tweets anymore, dude.
I
so
did
block,
I've done that,
bye.
Right.
Bye. But yeah. That's Oz.
Do you have any responses to the argument that
Yeah.
leaving Afghanistan will endanger women and girls?
Well, there's no doubt that like any territory that the Taliban takes over is a danger for women and girls because of their crazy ideology. But the US being there hasn't made it better. The US briefly overthrew the Taliban government when they invaded in 2001 and like propped up this really corrupt, like drug narco trafficking kind of government that's all involved in like the opium trade there and just steals money from like the public coffers. And also have like crazy human rights abuses, but that didn't last very long. The Taliban like retook territory really quickly. And so the US being there isn't actually preventing the Taliban from having power. It's actually made the Taliban stronger over time, the US remaining there. But like that also talking about it in that way, like sidesteps the issue of like how Afghanistan got to this place.
Right.
And the way it got to this place is in the 1980s, before the 1980s, in 1979, the US embarked on this policy of trying to lure the Soviets into Afghanistan. I think 6 months before the Soviets even came into Afghanistan, the US started funding the Mujahideen, which was this collection of like Islamic groups, some worse than others. This is not the Taliban, by the way. People confuse us with the Taliban. That's not where the Taliban
Right.
comes from. But anyway, this started really like a destabilization process of Afghanistan by funding this really regressive group of people that were conservative and wanted to go back to the good old days. One of the people they funded, whose name I don't want to say wrong, Hakmidyar, I want to say, but if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. But he was like, he had actually come up in university and he would throw acid in women's faces.
Wow.
That's one of the people that the US was funding as a part of the Mujahideen. So the US was like funding people that were bad for women back then against, you know, essentially what was a communist government. You can say what you want about them. They had their issues, but it was secular.
Yeah. And women
and it wanted to advance women's rights and educate women. And the people the US was funding were doing the opposite. So this just goes to show you the US doesn't give a shit about women's rights. But on top of that, then where does the Taliban come from? The US funds Mujahideen. 10 years later, Mujahideen wins because the Soviets like leave because the Soviet Union's collapsing. And you have these like different Mujahideen groups in charge. Now, all these 10 years, there's all these refugees from Afghanistan in Peshawar in Pakistan who are on the border in these like tent refugee cities. And who comes in and funds their schools? Saudi Arabia. They fund these madrasas in these refugee camps in Peshawar. That is where the Taliban comes from. The Taliban comes from that generation of refugees that were indoctrinated in like Saudi style Wahhabi ideology. And so then in the 90s, because there was like this power vacuum, right? Because the Soviets left, and then these like different Mujahideen factions were in charge. That's when you had the Taliban come in and like take charge of the country. So the US set the stage for that. And so to suggest that the US leaving is actually going to be bad for women's rights is to suggest the US has never done anything in Afghanistan that has helped women's rights. The US has destroyed that country and like rotted it from the inside out, de-developed what little development was there, and left it with a crumbling, non-existent economy. And the only economy that does exist is around like heroin. So the US is not the answer to Afghanistan. And it's not going to be pretty. Like when the US leaves, the war there will continue because it's not just the US fighting that's happening in Afghanistan. There's local fighting happening as well. And that's going to continue. But like that's a consequence of what the US did there, and suggesting that they can fix it by staying is just kicking the can down the road and like being in denial. And all of the other aspect of this, it's really important, I think, to like highlight is a lot of the people that are saying the US has to stay for women are people like Max Boot and people like Bill Kristol and like these neoconservative types who for the last decade, except for Max Boot more recently, but before that, have been advocating for arming jihadist rebels who they call moderate in Syria, who have a similar ideology as the Taliban. They've been advocating for arming the Taliban of Syria to take over Syria. So that shows you right there that these people have no, like you can't listen to what they're saying. They don't actually mean what they're saying. If they actually cared about women, they wouldn't have spent the last 10 years advocating for the Taliban to take over Syria. So like, fuck them.
Well, I mean, to play kind of devil's advocate, like they could have the wrong intentions, right? But what are people like Boot and Crystal proposing? Just staying there?
Mhm.
Just staying there. Okay.
If you just wait a little bit
Right.
longer, like they literally just want to stay there forever.
And why do you think that really is? I mean, I think
Because they support
believers.
they really believe, they're neoconservatives.
Right.
They really have this belief that like America can spread goodness. And also like, you know, Bill Kristol sits on the board of like a million different think tanks that are funded by weapons companies.
Right.
Like, he has an actual material
Stake,
interest.
Right.
Whether he tells
Skin in
him,
the
I mean,
game,
whether he
right.
tells himself stupid fairy tales so he can sleep better at night, that he's doing it to help women.
Right.
I mean, he's making money
Right.
off these wars.
Yeah. I mean, same thing with Dick Cheney, right?
Right.
Like, is he a true believer or was it
It's probably a mix.
KBR?
I imagine it's a
probably
mix of both.
mix of both. Yeah.
I don't think that, like, I doubt these guys are going to bed at night being like, oh,
Right.
like I want to kill all these people so we can
so
make
they
a
can
profit.
line our coffers, yeah.
Although some of
but
them
they're fine with that. And
They
if
are.
any of them would, it would be Cheney.
Yeah, like the Henry Kissinger style of
Yeah.
like everything's cold and calculated
Yeah.
about what's good for like American hegemony.
So terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually do want, I was looking at some of these Oz tweets. I guess I had two questions. One is
Wow, I don't even see when he tweets about me anymore.
well, you know how I first encountered him
Yeah.
was I released an interview with you and he was like, Katie Halper, will you disavow? I think this was like Katie Halper had on a sadist Rania Khalek. And I kind of freaked out. I'm not going to lie, because I didn't know that these people, like, I did.
It's
I was
scary
like,
when they come for you.
Well, because not only that, I was like, oh my God, was I totally wrong about Rania
Was
Khalek?
Rania really is sadist?
So
I'm totally
I remember I texted people, I looked into it, I was like, no, okay, that guy is just like
a crazy person. Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever, or rational.
But that shit works. It shows
does
you
work.
It's like, it's bullying.
Yes, it is bullying and it's smearing. But here's the thing. I remember a sign, I was like, okay, I'm going to engage with this guy so I was like, saying that the U.S., arguing that the U.S. should not be arming rebels, does not an Assadist make.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is the takeaway? What would you like the U.S. to do? Do you think there should be intervention? Do you think Assad should be replaced? I said that to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I refuse to answer these questions until you disavow Rania Khalek, which he probably knew at that point I wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
So then he gets to look principled as opposed to some
weird. You should have just disavowed me to see what he said. Oh, yeah. You should have just been like, you could have told me, you should be like, Rania, I don't mean this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it just so that I can hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah, so this is Kevin Costola, who you host a podcast
He demanded Kevin give him a platform at Shadowproof.
Statement on Oz Chatterjee's request to be given a platform after no platforming Rania Khalek.
Yeah.
So for the past days, those who follow my journalism may have noticed exchanges between Oz Chatterjee, and freelance writer, journalist, and me. I confronted and berated Chatterjee for attacking a colleague, Rania Khalek, and playing a role in getting her speaking event at the University of North Carolina canceled.
Yeah, this brings up memories.
Chatterjee has committed himself to destroying the livelihood of Khalek. His campaign started months ago. When asked if he would campaign to make sure nobody would ever donate to her work again, Chatterjee replied, yes, that would be preferable. Maybe one day you will apologize for your shameful politics, but that won't stop me. And I will never stop, not with any of you. I will never rest while you are given platforms on or publishing opportunities, end quote. He later specifically described me as an enemy of mankind and hoped God would have mercy because he had no plans to show mercy.
He's crazy. Like, Oz is crazy. I don't know how someone who speaks to other people like this is like constantly hired. I'm not. But he's not constant.
No, we don't. Let him.
Let him be. I don't want him to starve, but he wants us to all starve. That's the thing.
And then Kevin keeps going. After I interviewed Khalek and wrote a report on the cancellation of the event, Chatterjee sent me a message indicating he read the report and requested I invite him on Unauthorized Disclosure, a weekly podcast I co-host with Khalek. He said, if you truly are interested in the story of what is really going on here and why, I'll agree to an unedited interview. End quote. I find this solicitation to be truly baffling and reprehensible. How does someone who has campaigned for months to destroy someone's professional career contact that person's colleague and ask someone to give them an opportunity to share their side of the story? How does an individual who is obsessed about denying platforms to a journalist turn around and act as if they are owed a platform to defend their actions? Chatterjee will never appear on Unauthorized Disclosure, nor will he ever be interviewed for the purpose of an adversarial interview for Shadowproof. He has no remorse for the damage he's inflicting on people like Rania Khalek, and the absolute last thing a person should do is seek common ground with Chatterjee and others like him to understand why he has taken advocacy for Syrian rebels to the extreme level of destroying professional careers of
I
journalism.
love Kevin
Yeah,
Gustola.
he's a good guy. Yeah,
He's so good. He's such a good like friend and colleague. So, you know,
very
what's
principled.
interesting is really principled. And you know, that was really important. He did that at the time because like at this time, I think it was my lowest point. Like I had nobody would let me write for them. I went to Aleppo and I went with like a bunch of other Western
That's the
correspondents.
thing. Yeah,
And like the Nation, the
You
they
got
all
canceled.
shut. I got canceled. Like they blacked me out. And I had been writing articles for The Intercept.
right.
And like as soon as I went on I got smeared for going on the same trip as the Washington
Was
Post.
there anything that they said about it? Was it because were they more critical of it than you were?
No. The day like I went on this trip of like Western correspondents and they all got attacked initially. My name ended up on a speakers list. But so did a bunch of other journalists. They put down as like a speaker. But they didn't get attacked because these journalists, like they had institutional backing. Whereas I'm just this like freelancer. And I also have an opinion. Everybody knew what my opinion was, which was anti-war.
Like less dangerous than pretending not to have one, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, but
so
also,
you were put down as a speaker and you spoke.
No, I didn't. I didn't even go to the conference. I didn't end up going because I got so freaked out. Because I have family in Damascus. I like called them up and left. And then I pissed off like everybody at this conference got angry with me. All the other journalists still went. New York Times, Washington Post, NPR,
including were any of them listed as speakers?
One or two others of them were. I think one of the lady from the Telegraph was.
Yeah.
But nobody went after her because the Telegraph has like a pro-interventionist position.
Right.
So like I was attacked
the Telegraph is the Telegraph.
Right, but it was also the position she had because they specifically attack people more if they have anti-war positions. But yeah, it was a really rough time because like I went on this trip and I spoke to all these people and like it was an important time because East Aleppo was still under the control of the freedom fighters of Ahrar al-Sham. Anyways, the point is like it really destroyed my career for a little bit. Like it did. I couldn't find any work anywhere.
Right.
And like that was because of Oz Chatterjee. And even though they're crazy, they are effective.
Right.
Like even if they come off as assholes, they're effective. Right. And like that's why I get frustrated with the talk about cancel culture because like I feel like I was really like my livelihood was canceled for a while. And like that doesn't ever get talked about because I'm not like Bari. Like Bari Weiss Bari Weiss writes everywhere.
Yeah, and she left the New York Times.
By her like voluntarily left. Like some people said
fired.
Some people said mean things about her. I literally could not get work. Like I could not get work. It was really, really difficult. Like I almost stopped being a journalist. Like I almost quit journalism because I was like, I guess I just can't do this.
What were you gonna do?
I have no idea. But like
you had no idea at the time.
I had no idea at the time, but I was like, maybe I just can't do that. Like if I can't make money doing this, like I can't feed myself. Right. So I need to go find something else to do.
Did any other things cross your mind? I'm just curious, like where you're like, I'll wait tables, I'll go back to school.
I would have never gone back to waiting tables. I thought maybe go back to school, although I don't have like, why would I do that? I don't have money. I was pretty lost for a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to like try, I'm going to go like be in Lebanon. It's easy for me to be there. I have family there. And I'm just going to go to Syria as much as possible and go to Iraq. I'm going to try to make this work. And I did. And eventually like I, got back on my feet. But with the only outlets I could get jobs at were like were like roughly affiliated outlets or RT affiliated outlets, and then that drew this whole other.
Right, you got Edward Snowden, which is when he was not allowed into the U.S. He was stuck in Russia.
Yeah,
you were not allowed into the media landscape.
And then it became Rania Khalek, a Russian stooge, and she's only saying this because she's getting paid by Russia, and it's like, well, no, I'm not getting paid by Russia, but also like it's the like this is literally like Soapbox was the only place at the time that I felt like I could get work, and they gave me a platform to say whatever I wanted. And I really appreciachted that. Right. And like, that's the only reason I stayed in media.
It also makes sense because if you are from the United States and you're doing, the Chomsky thing, which is criticizing your own government and focusing on that, like there will be times when foreign countries will be more critical of the U.S.
Yeah.
Maybe not Britain, but like a lot of foreign countries will of course be more critical of the U.S. So your perspective will coincide. Yeah. I mean, it's not a monolith, right? Depends on who's in power. And obviously the Russians have people all over the spectrum, but like you definitely are allowed to report on things like you did really
even Al Jazeera. I mean, Al Jazeera got really bad on like Middle Eastern politics, but like Al Jazeera was like that for a while. Like it was the one place like people could go to like talk shit about American actions in Iraq, for example, right? I mean, Al Jazeera has shifted because Qatar's policy and views have shifted. But the point is like, yeah, I mean, I don't regret it. Like I learned like so much getting to like work for doing video stuff at Soapbox, and I needed it at the time.
Right.
So I don't regret it at all, but it really is a shame. Like there's a lot of talented people out there who are just boxed in and cornered just because of their politics. And it really makes you realize like we don't have a free media at all.
Right.
You can only do it if you can like somehow manage to make a living on YouTube,
Right.
Which is really rare. Like only a few people have managed to do that. It's not easy. Or if you can like get a job.
A few people in media.
Yeah, in media.
Yeah. I mean, it's relatively few people, but
to make a living. Yeah.
Right.
Like, and I mean, it's just the level, the lack of freedom, or the lack of like availability of jobs in general in the media is so little as it is, even just among established media outlets. Like they're like shedding jobs all the time. So add to that the sort of like actual politics of being anti-war and being a leftist, and there's even fewer opportunities, and there's this whole apparatus that exists to just like smear you and shit on you and like destroy your livelihood if you have the wrong opinions, whether it's like on Israel or whether it's on Syria or whether it's on.
It's just funny how like no one, I mean, I guess some people did, but they didn't describe themselves as leftists or liberals. Like you were not, like the right wing would call you a Saddamist if you oppose war in Iraq.
But
liberals wouldn't. But if you are saying there should not be intervention, if you're saying there should not be regime, that's my mom talking to the moderate rebels. And if you're saying there shouldn't be regime change in that country, again, you don't have to like Assad. Like you can think that it's a preference. Yeah, that's the thing.
At this point,
Shh, don't say that. He's not going to keep paying for us.
Assad, are you listening?
Does he have support in the country? Like
not as much as he used to, because the country's gone to complete shit, not just because of the war, but like the US sanctions have destroyed the economy, and sanctions also empower corrupt elites to monopolize different industries even more.
We should just start calling them lethal sanctions, because they are. People don't ever think of it.
No, they're like murder. Yeah. They murder. Yeah. People die because of sanctions, but like their salaries are worthless. They blame Assad. So in a way, like the US has shifted from funding crazy jihadists to overthrow the government to just like trying to defund Syria and make it so miserable.
Defund the police state.
And the thing is, sanctions, they defunded Assad's police state. The thing is, sanctions do work over time.
Right.
Like they soften a country up for collapse. That's what happened in Iraq in the 90s. Right. Like when people say sanctions don't work, what they mean to say is it doesn't make the government less powerful. It hurts people, but over time, it also destroys the culture. Like Syria's education system is going to suffer. It already is. Like that's what happened to Iraq. Iraq's education system, they went from one of the most literate countries in the world, in the Middle East, to like
they work at inflicting I mean they work, but then just admit that it's warfare. Like they work if you're willing to kill and starve people
into submission. That's what it is.
into then hate, because if you're living under a government and sanctions are imposed, you're going to start blaming and resenting the government. Although like Castro was able to,
because Cuba I mean, Cuba's different because they found, I mean, the socialist country that was constantly changing its economic structure to try and work within the parameters of the embargo they were under, and they had to repeatedly do that, and it's been successful. They're suffering under that situation again, and they're having to like reconfigure their economy,
vaccinating everyone,
and figure it out. But Syria is not a socialist country, and that's not the only issue. I mean, Syria is also occupied. Like a third of Syria is occupied by either Turkey or the U.S., and the U.S. has its proxy forces as well as like 2,500 U.S. troops at least are occupying the most fertile.
Oh, they suck. Anyway, we can wrap.
We can wrap. But the U.S. is occupying Syria. They're not occupying Cuba militarily.
Right.
So like Syria is actually under a way more stringent, I think, blockade than Cuba. Syria is under a way more stringent blockade than
I just
Cuba.
wanted to. So this Louis Alade tweeted, this guy has now resorted to doctoring screenshots of my tweets in order to make it look like I've written things that in reality I never have. I would really appreciate anyone who has the time reporting this tweet to Twitter. But then I don't know what the tweet was because it was erased.
Oh, Oz must have deleted it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I was just trying to look at some.
I mean,
examples.
Glenn's gone after it. Glenn is like, Oz is the biggest liar in the world. Yeah, like everybody who's had to deal with this guy knows what a sick freak he
But
is.
I just want Oz to know that like he is in a delusional way claiming credit for. He literally, I don't know if you heard our last episode,
for
Rania, but we said that the reason that we got canceled is because we demanded that Assad be our third host.
Yeah.
And then
that was a great idea.
Yeah, great idea. He tried to do it with you.
Yeah,
too,
Assad even got the equipment. He had a microphone. Oh my God. And he had a webcam.
Yeah.
So we told him it got canceled. He was so
really
sad.
upset?
He was really upset.
Well, he's an eye doctor, right? So what is it? An ophthalmologist?
I don't know which one.
I never know what it is. I don't know if he's one of those.
Yeah.
So he was very good about he picked out a very good camera, obviously. And then on last week, our revelation was that we broke over Saudi Arabia because we didn't want to keep doing PR propaganda for Saudi Arabia.
Oh, because they like fund or they like have like a stake in Rolling Stone.
But I don't actually, I don't even know. I have no idea that is true.
I
or
think
pro-Trump. But the argument was that they were pro-Trump, which they definitely haven't.
Saudi Arabia?
No, Rolling Stone.
Oh, okay.
I'll call him Saudi Arabia for short. Just kidding. So he tweeted out, Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi confirmed in a recent podcast that they were both fired from Rolling Stone because of their pro-Assad views and war crimes revisionism.
I saw what you said in response that you were like, it was like a joke.
Sure, Matt, it's always satire. You crack jokes while your guests cover up atrocities. Rolling Stone had enough, so you crack some jokes about that too. You're the punchline, though. Now that Matt has quote tweeted me, the mentions are swamped with people going, actually, Assad is innocent, you head chopper. This is the sewage he piped straight onto Rolling Stone's platform.
Bet you no one said that.
Matt Taibbi is also tweeting snark behind a block because after I tweeted about some of the heinous garbage he wrote during his exile days, he DM'd me a bunch of desperate excuses and blocked me because I wasn't interested in hearing it. Josh Olson, however, says, who hosts the West Wing thing, however you slice it, you should go on their show, West Wing thing.
I didn't know about it.
I'll tell you about it. However you slice it, you'd have to be brain damaged to have thought that they were being serious.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Oz goes, they were joking about a serious thing, and the fact that you are a fan of a pair of atrocity deniers says everything anyone needs to know about you as a person. And Rania, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Rania Khalek, as well as at BreakThrough News on YouTube. And like I said, a lot more to come.
Awesome. And you are, you're a useful idiot. We all are. So you remember.
Always. I'm on Team Useful Idiot.
Yeah. Forever.
I'm just poor Assad. Condolences that you couldn't make it.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to do a little bit of a new feature where we do a reading of a newly released political book. We've got an interesting one that's out now. It's got some pretty funny details in it. It's called Madam Speaker, Nancy Pelosi and the Lessons of Power, a biography by Susan Page, best-selling author of The Matriarch. Couple of weird things about this book. It's very, very obsessed with what Nancy Pelosi is wearing. This is the opening line of the book. Nancy Pelosi dressed that morning in the colors of the suffragettes, in a white pantsuit and purple top. By the end of the day, she was certain that Hillary Clinton would make history by winning the White House, blah, blah, blah. Later on, it's talking about her confrontations with Donald Trump. It comes out that each of those, and we've picked on some of these episodes that are sort of performative things where she's like tearing up. What was it again?
His speech.
Yeah.
The clapping.
The clapping, the thing that happened in the cabinet room. It turns out, according to this book, that she carefully coordinated what she was wearing in each of those incidents so that they would be a succession of incidents that collectively would be a red, white, and blue protest to Donald Trump. So just to go back and read, delivering an exaggerated sardonic clap at Trump's State of the Union address 2 months later, standing at the table in the cabinet room that fall, jabbing her finger at him before she led a Democratic walkout from a meeting where he had derided her as a third-rate politician, tearing up the text of the 2020 State of the Union he had just delivered as he stood with his back to her, basking in applause from the Republican side of the chamber. Her choice of apparel in each of these encounters seemed to telegraph a message, a declaration of intent in red, white, and blue. She wore that memorable red coat talking to reporters in the White House driveway, a white pantsuit at the joint session of Congress, a blue suit in the cabinet room session. And this author is very close to Pelosi, so what she's seeming to say is that this was a calculated succession of outfits that together were meant to be red, white, and blue. So that's interesting. But the most interesting, the most interesting thing, and this is what Katie and I are going to read from, is a scene about Nancy Pelosi's conflict with the Squad. And there's a really interesting passage. I'll just read sort of part of the background. In June, amid negotiations over an immigration bill, Pelosi pleaded with House Democrats to support legislation that would provide $4.5 billion in emergency border funding, including care of migrant children. It wasn't close to the measure that Democrats wanted, but she agreed it was the best deal they could realistically cut. Better something than nothing. Quote, a vote against this bill is a vote for Donald Trump and is inhumane outside the circle of civilized attitude toward the children, she said at a closed meeting of the Democratic caucus. The 4 members of the Squad were the only Democrats who defected on the vote. Pelosi's response took the form of a slapdown that dominated the front page of the New York Times Sunday Review section. An illustration showed her as a huge and valiant-looking figure, gazing upward and wearing white. Much smaller figures depicted Ocasio-Cortez and Tlaib, Trump and Russia Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, and a group of youthful protesters, all of them arrayed below her, perhaps vying unsuccessfully for her attention. Quote, it's Nancy Pelosi's parade, the headline read. The subhead pulled a quote from the interview with columnist Maureen Dowd. If the left doesn't think I'm left enough, so be it, she told me. Pelosi, who sat down for the interview after being cheered as she marched in San Francisco's annual Pride Parade, could not have conveyed less concern about the Squad. And this is where we start getting into the real back and forth. Quote, all these people have their public whatever in their Twitter world, she said dismissively after popping a chocolate treat in her mouth. But they don't have any following. They're 4 people, and that's how many votes they got. There was the iron fist. Ocasio-Cortez shot back using, of course, Twitter. That public, whatever is called the public sentiment she posted, and wielding this power to shift it is how we actually achieve meaningful change in this country. It then goes on, and then I thought, Katie, maybe you could read this next section that starts with the author of this book describing how she tried to approach Pelosi to ask about this.
Sure, yeah. That afternoon, I sat down with Nancy Pelosi for an interview. She was still wound tight. First, she insisted that there was nothing to see here, nothing to talk about. Reporters were hyping the story. She said it was just Democrats being Democrats. Quote, I've been here a long time. We have always had our differences of opinion and all the rest. And we're not the Republican Party. We're not a rubber stamp. I mean, that's not what we are. No, I think it was fine. End quote. During the meeting, she had told them not to attack other members. Instead, quote, they should attack me. It'll only help me raise money, end quote. That had gotten a laugh. Nothing surprises me, she said. 30 years since I've been here, they've never seen any fights like what we had when we had Central America and the Caucasus was divided. NAFTA and the Caucasus was divided. Iraq War and the Caucasus was divided. Then she said sharply, but did you want to talk about the book? That was a sign that she was finished talking about the Squad. I tried...
Sorry, if we could just interrupt to make clear that the author here is conveying the fact that Pelosi has had prepared remarks basically to talk about the Squad. Right. So she's basically saying, the caucus is always divided. It's not a big deal, whatever. And then by saying, okay, did you want to talk about the book, the other thing, which is the signal that, okay, we're done talking about the Squad.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
So as the author explains, then she said sharply, but did you want to talk about the book? That was a sign that she was finished talking about the Squad. I tried one more question about the difference between making a beautiful pate and making sausage. Did the new members fail to understand the sausage making process? With that, she became as openly agitated as I'd ever seen her in an interview, and not with me. Quote, some people come here, as Dave Obey would have said, to pose for holy pictures, she said, mimicking a child trying to make a solemn show of piety. And David Obey is a former congressman?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See how perfect I am and how pure. Obie, a Wisconsin congressman, had made his share of sausage as chair of the Appropriations Committee. Remember when David used to say that all the time? Okay, there's the group that's going to pose for the holy pictures. Now let's legislate over here. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi, I guess is also like her, someone who likes to chastise people for having, I don't know. Well, hold on 1 second. It just hit me. She's criticizing other people for posing.
Yeah, exactly.
For photos and holy photos. Like
that's what's so hilarious about this.
Right.
This is the same person who did the kente cloth scarves.
The kente cloth scarves, the clapping, and smiling at him, which like became some weird revisionist, feminist, subversive narrative, whatever, so stupid. And then of course, the ripping up the speeches. But I also wanted to, and as we know, red, white, and blue, succession. This is a really, a good moment for that kind of speaks to how premeditated Nancy don't pose for photos Pelosi is. Also, it's funny because she talks about appearing holy, and she literally was like I'm a Catholic, so we don't have love and I don't have any hate in my heart for Donald Trump. Okay, so this is a nice clip from Hillary Clinton's podcast, which is called You and Me Both, which is hilarious. So this
sounds
is
like
just
a sitcom.
I know, right? So this is a clip from You and Me Both, and you'll see why it's relevant if we could just play that clip.
We learned a lot about our system of government over the last 4 years with a president who disdains democracy and, as you have said numerous times, has other agendas. What they all are, I don't think we yet know. I hope historically we will find out who he's beholden to, who pulls his strings. I would love to see his phone records to see whether he was talking to Putin the day that the insurgents invaded our capital. But we now know that not just him, but his enablers, his accomplices, his cult members have the same disregard for democracy. Do you think we need a 9/11 type commission to investigate report everything that they can pull together and explain what happened?
I do. Let me, again, to your point of who is he beholden to, as I've said over and over, as I said to him in that picture with my blue suit,
right,
as I was leaving, what I was saying to him as I was pointing rudely at him, with you, Mr. President, all roads lead to Putin. I don't know what Putin has on him politically, financially, or personally. But what happened last week was a gift to Putin because Putin wants to undermine democracy in our country and throughout the world. And these people, unbeknownst to them maybe, are Putin puppets. They were doing Putin's business when they did that at the incitement of an insurrection by the President of the United States. So yes, we should have a 9/11 commission, and there's strong support in the Congress to do that.
There's so much to unpack there, but I just like how openly she refers to her fashion choices.
I know. Well, when I was standing there in my blue suit, remember?
Pointing at him so rudely.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
It's blue is following up my red and white appearances, yeah.
I don't have any evidence of anything, but, I'd sure like to find out if there is any. I don't know. I mean, ridiculous. We get in trouble here when we complain about that stuff, but we're
doing Putin's bidding.
Yeah,
business,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the funny thing about this book, and there's a lot in this book, but the anger towards AOC is pretty funny. So, I mean, that whole thing about her being the person who gets the holy pictures taken while we legislate over here.
Right.
Is pretty funny. She actually goes on to say, and that's experience. They'll understand when they have something they want to pass. If you don't want any results, you don't ever have to do anything. But if you want to have something that you want to pass, you're better off not having your chief of staff send out a tweet in the manner in which that was sent out. By now, she was not even bothering to mask her ire, the author wrote. Quote, "I've never seen anything like it," she railed. If you thought her Twitter or whatever was where this ended, it didn't end.
It did not. That's a tip.
There's more of it. Yeah, we just saw the tip.
Just the tip,
in this book. So that's interesting. We would love to get your recommendations on any other political books you think we should read. But that was a good incident for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.